and distancing ourselves from the United Nations. Well, after he took office in January of 2017, he went to work on the deep state and regularly battled it up until the point that he left office. He pulled away from such things as the Paris Climate Accord, the World Health Organization, and multiple other UN initiatives and the push toward globalism. He resisted it. While a number of people were removed from positions, there was constant pushback, with virtually every agency and department in the United States taking actions to slow down or to stop initiatives that he was promoting. And now, with the change in presidency just a short time ago, our guest today contends that the swamp is being refilled with deep state globalists from the Council on Foreign Relations. Joining us today, we welcome William F. Jasper, senior editor at the New American Magazine. He's an author, a journalist, commentator, as well as a top investigative reporter and documentary producer. For more than 3 decades, he served as an accredited correspondent to the United Nations in New York and UN summits around the world. Bill, good to have you with us here today on Crosstalk.
Well, thank you very much. It's certainly a pleasure to be with you.
If we could, let's begin by defining who is the Council on Foreign Relations. What is their origin? What is their goal?
Right. The Council on Foreign Relations has now been with us for a century. They were begun actually following World War I, and a mysterious man who was Woodrow Wilson, President Woodrow Wilson's alter ego, that's how Woodrow Wilson described him, meaning his other self, had a mysterious hold over Wilson. And at the Paris Accords after the World War I, Woodrow Wilson had Colonel House there as his alter ego. And Colonel House brought a whole contingent of people that he had selected from academia and from corporate America who were interested in forming world government. And they got together and they hatched the plan for United Nations, or for the League of Nations. And when that failed to catch on and to pass the Senate, the League of Nations Charter, the Colonel House and the rest of his kindergarten that he brought along there with him, all of his brain trust, got together and formed the Council on Foreign Relations. They figured, okay, we've got too many Americans that they called isolationists. That's what a term they've tried to fasten on all Americans, saying, oh, you're isolationist if you don't want to have a world government. Americans, our founding fathers, were not isolationists. They were non-interventionists. They believed in having relations with all countries of the world, that we would trade with them, that we'd have amicable relations with them, but they didn't want to have entangling alliances, and they certainly didn't want to give up their national sovereignty to any global entity. And the Council on Foreign Relations wanted precisely that. And so they began with a tremendous amount of money from all of their Wall Street partners. We've elaborated on this in books that we've published, such as The Shadows of Power and other books. For instance, my 1992 book, which I wrote after attending the Earth Summit, the UN Earth Summit in Rio de Janeiro, Global Tyranny, Step by Step, the United Nations and the Emerging New World Order, pointed out that they then began building their influence in government. And by the time of World War II, we see that the Council on Foreign Relations had essentially almost taken over the U.S. government. The Department of State, Department of Treasury, Department of Defense, all of the main cabinet posts were either run by members who had been appointed by President Franklin Delano Roosevelt, that were Council on Foreign Relations members, or in their assistant secretary, deputy secretary of defense, treasury, etc. Those posts were held by them. And now, here we have 60 years after that, for the last 8 or 9 Republican and Democratic administrations, we see they are overwhelmingly populated by cabinet posts and sub-cabinet posts that are members of the Council on Foreign Relations. And And there's nothing to parallel this at any other time in history where an organization has incrementally, piecemeal, gotten very steadily in control of a main government like the United States, as the Council on Foreign Relations has. And so that today, back when I first started writing about this in the 1970s, and when I would speak on college campuses, I actually had a number of experiences where college professors would say, "Oh, you right-wingers, Council on Foreign Relations, you talk about this. I've never even heard of them." And so one professor said, "I don't even believe they exist." And fortunately, I had the Council on Foreign Relations Journal, Foreign Affairs there, and I had their annual report. And I said, "Well, I've been there to their headquarters in New York City. They do exist. Yes, they do." But it was an open secret for many decades. The New York Times, the Washington Post, the Associated Press never mentioned the Council on Foreign Relations, except occasionally in a rather reverential manner. This is a noted think tank of very learned, civic-minded public servants. And so now we see the change in the last 15 to 20 years, and especially in the last 10 years, an escalation where they've come out of the closet, and you see the Council on Foreign Relations now all over the place. They have on C-SPAN and on all of the major network media, Richard Haass, the president of the Council on Foreign Relations, and many of the big senior fellows that are their in-house brainiacs are regular guests on the media, and the Council on Foreign Relations is referred to respectively as the most important think tank in the United States. What have they been thinking about? They have been thinking about and promoting as both essayists and as so-called philosophers and commentators, as well as in appointed and elected positions in the government. They've been promoting world government, transferring more national sovereignty to the United Nations, expanding the scope and power of the federal government over our lives. And they have, in the last 4 years, we saw, they fought tooth and claw to keep from being dislodged from their positions of power in the federal government. So they went after, in an unprecedented way, after President Donald Trump, because he was the first president since World War II when they really took over the federal government, Republican or Democrat, who had really crossed them, who was reversing much of their agenda. China just being one of them, but on all across the board. So they did everything possible, including with all their CFR cohorts in the media, to defame and destroy him and to bring him down.
And we'll be delving more into that. I'd like to air a clip, an audio clip here, as comes from Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, who addressed the Council on Foreign Relations. I'd like to play this clip. It's only 25 or 30 seconds long here. Have you comment on this? Because as Secretary of State, she knows the influence of the CFR. Here it is.
Thank you very much, Richard, and I am delighted to be here in these new headquarters. I have been often to, the mothership in New York City, but it's good to have an outpost of the Council right here down the street from the State Department. We get a lot of advice from the Council, so this will mean I won't have this far to go to be told what we should be doing and how we should think about the future.
There's no denying the influence that is there. I mean, Hillary referred to that as Secretary of State.
Yes, so this was Hillary Clinton in one of her many appearances before the Council on Foreign Relations. And the Richard, who she refers to, is, of course, President Richard Haass, who's president of the Council on Foreign Relations, former State Department official. And you see him over the media quite a bit. But she's very revealing. She says, to find out what we should be doing and how we should think. Mm-hmm. So, she's basically revealing that the Council on Foreign Relations tells her what to do and what to think. And we've known that for a long time. We've had many other quotes from many of the other people who've been before, public officials who've been before the Council on Foreign Relations. And my newest article, which came out just after this one about Joe Biden, actually has Joe Biden sitting there with Richard Haass. And Richard Haass introduces him, and then Richard Haass says, and of course I'm president of the Council on Foreign Relations. And then Joe Biden quips to him, perhaps jokingly, yeah, and he's my boss.
Wow.
Or I work for him.
Wow.
And, obviously he meant that in a joking manner, but for those who understand the relationship, it really isn't a joke. It is true. Joe Biden is an empty suit. He did not get where he is by any master statesmanship. He got there because he has towed the Council on Foreign Relations line for decades. I mean, he's a total creature.
Bill, how deep is this deep state? And I ask that because there was a plethora of people that Donald Trump removed from positions of influence. It seemed that there were many more tiers ready to fill their gap at that time. He actually faced a lot of opposition continuously, even in agencies where he had placed new agency. How deep is this deep state? Well,
we get some indication of just how incredibly deep this is. Well, first of all, what Joe Biden now has around 4,000 appointments in the top agencies of the federal government that he'll be making, 1,000 of which, or 1,200 of which, in that neighborhood require Senate confirmation. But below them, there's several thousand that don't. And so what we see is that during the Obama administration, and not only there, many of the deep state people go clear back to the Bush administration, a few even to the Clinton administration. So when they get in there, many of them burrowed down in, and it's very difficult to get them out, as President Trump found out. They bring lawsuits, civil service lawsuits, and tie you up in court, and you run out the clock. So we saw examples of this, for instance, when almost all of the heads of the intelligence community, the IC, that's the CIA, DIA, NSA, NRO, FBI, came out with their intelligence report in 2017.
I tell you what, we're going to have to pick up after the break. William F. Jasper, our guest here today. As the swamp refills with deep state globalists, we'll be back in 1 minute. You're listening to Crosstalk on the VCY America Network.
Back to Genesis with Dr. John Morris, geologist and president of the Institute for Creation Research. Dr. Morris, in total, how many animal species have been found in the fossil record?
You know, Chris, the answer to this question surprised me. Evolutionists are fond of talking about millions and millions of fossil animal types, but in reality, only about 250,000 fossil species have ever been found. That's far fewer than the number of species that are still existing today. And it certainly is not many compared to the millions and billions of animals which must have existed if evolution were true. What we find in the fossil record are clams and snails and coral, the very same kind of animals that are alive today. Face it, Chris, evolution didn't happen. It's not happening today, and it didn't happen in the past as recorded in the fossils. What happened is creation, just like it says back in Genesis.
To learn more about creation, get our free DVD called That's a Fact. Call us at 800-628-7640 and mention the promo code FACT.
You're listening to Crosstalk on VCY America. William F. Jasper, our guest here today, senior editor at the New American magazine, their website, thenewamerican.com, thenewamerican.com. Bill, we're talking about this deep state, and I'm wondering if you could just talk about its membership just a bit. How extensive is it? Are there names that people will readily recognize? Are there people from both sides of the major political parties that are players in this deep state?
Yes, there are many names that are household words. Most are not, unless you're a real policy wonk or politically active. There are about 5,000 members, and they include top names in finance, business, media, some of the names that people would, in military. So some of the people that would be most recognizable that would be the media people, and that would include people like Judy Woodruff and people in the ABC, NBC, CBS, George Stephanopoulos, people that appear regularly on there that we're supposed to see as being neutral and being objective reporters, but of course they are not. It includes some of the biggest names in business, not only individuals, but corporations. There are corporate members. So we have Citibank, J.P. Morgan, Morgan Stanley. All of the major banks are virtually our members.
Wow.
Many of the Microsoft and the big tech companies are as well. So,
well, you're opening eyes right now, because I mean, we saw the attacks against President Trump, that we saw them coming from the big tech, and still their continued effect there. But you also opened the eyes of many when you talked about members of the media that are part of this Council on Foreign Relations, because we saw how the media just targeted the Trump presidency even before he was inaugurated.
Yes, and so in the media, you have it in many different forms. You have the actual reporters, for instance, some of the most vicious ones that were attacking him daily were Joe Scarborough and Mika Brzezinski at MSNBC. They're both CFR members, and so it goes with David Ignatius at the Washington Post. In fact, at the New York Times, Washington Post, and the Associated Press, Michael Bloomberg is one of Trump's biggest opponents, a big globalist. He is a member of the Council on Foreign Relations, and Bloomberg News is one of their corporate members.
Wow.
So we see now with President Biden, in just the first few days of his presidency, he loaded up his cabinet and his top positions with all Council on Foreign Relations. That's Secretary of State, Secretary of Defense, the Federal Reserve, Secretary of Homeland Security, Secretary of Commerce. And so I list all of these in the article that you mentioned at the beginning of the show. And we know that in the next few weeks he's going to load it up with dozens, if not hundreds more. It's usual for these administrations to have 200 or 300 of the Council on Foreign Relations members in all of these key slots at the top of our government. And so that's the thing that Americans should be really, really concerned about and should be asking questions about. We put together a list at the New American. It's a chart showing administration after administration, going clear back to the Roosevelt administration up to today, and showing all the key cabinet posts and sub-cabinet posts and military leaders that they have, and intelligence people in the CIA, et cetera, that they have put into power. And so this is where a lot of people are mystified and confused, because so many military generals and admirals and former heads of the intelligence agency, the FBI, CIA, have come out attacking Trump and Republicans and conservatives as extremists. They have been doing this repeatedly, and these are the people that we trust. They run the military. They're political generals and political admirals who have been skipped over the heads of others, and who have replaced the good generals and admirals who have been fired, as, for instance, Obama fired over 200 generals and admirals and then replaced them with more pliant.
Let me ask you this, Bill. Where can they see this chart that you refer to?
Yes, so if you go to thenewamerican.com, and our story in there is called Directing the Disorder. and just put that in the search engine. It's directing the disorder, and the chart is the CFR's deep state over the administrations, and so it shows all of the various administrations, Republican and Democrat, where we have seen this play out. And this should help people understand why we can change the political party in power and really not see any changes in policy. As, for instance, with regard to China. Until Trump came along, we had an unbroken succession of Republican and Democrat administrations selling out to China, giving China all of the technology, all of the aid, all of the loans, all of our factories, all of our jobs, decade after decade, Republican after Democrat, because both the Republican and Democrat parties have been infiltrated and essentially taken over at the top by this. And we saw this with all of the Republicans who backstabbed President Trump because he was rejuvenating the Republican Party and taking it back to its roots, popularizing it with all of the minority groups. He brought an unprecedented number of Black and Hispanic and Asian and other minorities into the Republican Party. He raised all boats with the rising tide of his economic recovery plans, and they couldn't stand that. They didn't want to see that.
Are there Republicans that are part of the CFR?
Oh, absolutely. There are many of it. For instance, Mitch McConnell, who is the top Republican in the Senate, his wife, Elaine Chao, who was in the Bush administration and was in the Trump administration. She was the first one to jump ship and to betray him. She's a member of the Council on Foreign Relations. So Dick Cheney, who is still one of the senior leaders of the Republican Party, was a longtime director of the Council on Foreign Relations, and he boasted about it in a video similar to the one with Hillary Clinton. And he says, well, yes, it's good to be back here at the Council on Foreign Relations. As you know, I was a member for many years. For a while, I was a director of the Council on Foreign Relations. But, of course, I didn't tell my constituents that, the voters back home in Wyoming, when I went home, ha, 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 and then he chuckled about it. Because, when he went back to the voters at home, he put on his cowboy hat and his cowboy boots and tried to pretend like he was just a regular old Wyoming cowboy. And, of course, he was really up there with David Rockefeller and George Soros and all the rest of the CFR crowd in Washington doing their bidding. And his daughter, Liz Cheney, of course, had played the key role in attempting to destroy Donald Trump by not only voting for his impeachment, but by making a very nasty speech denouncing him. And so right now she is going to have to pay the price for it because she's already losing her chairmanship of the Republican Conference Committee as a result of that. But if predictions are right by the chairman of the Republican Party in Wyoming, says she couldn't be reelected as dog catcher.
Wow.
So hopefully we'll see her kicked out of there.
Yeah, now, you mentioned Elaine Chao, but President Trump actually had appointed members of the CFR close to him, but they didn't turn out so well for him, did they?
No, and those of us who've been following this for many years groaned with many of his appointments. Are going, who is vetting these appointments for him? Does he really realize who these people are? Because, for instance, Anthony Scaramucci, one of the investor hedge fund guys, was one of his appointments, Council on Foreign Relations member. He was appointed as head of communications office. He only lasted 11 days before Trump fired him. And what did Scaramucci do? He went right out, wrote a book, went on all the talk circuits on MSNBC, CNN, et cetera, attacking Trump. We knew he was a scoundrel from the beginning, and just the mere fact that he's CFR should have alerted Trump and or somebody in his vetting team that, hey, he's not going to be a good guy, even without knowing all his background. Another one was H.R. McMaster, who was National Security Advisor. And H.R. McMaster and a clique of his CFR cronies in the National Security and Defense Departments tried to put together a coup to throw Trump out of office. So these are the people that are supposed to be working for him, and they're actually working to destroy him. Same with John Bolton. Now, John Bolton is kind of confusing to a lot of people because he sounds like he's a conservative on most things, and he attacks the United Nations, which we appreciate because the United Nations is an abhorrent organization that has unjustifiably been referred to as a peacemaking organization. And so John Bolton does a number of things like that, but he is a neoconservative CFR member who believes in perpetual war. And he, unlike the founding fathers who believe war is the last resort, he was trying to goad President Trump into expanding war with Iran, with Iraq, with Syria, everywhere. So finally, Trump got rid of him, and of course, he started attacking Trump as well, showing his, what his real orientation was. So, and there have been a number of others as well, and so it was pretty clear during the impeachment process, and then during the aftermath of the vote, when President Trump was trying to challenge the fraud, the massive fraud that went on. And if you read or listen to any of the people that were in on the White House Oval Office meetings where President Trump was trying to pursue this, you find out that a bunch of the people on his White House counsel staff are obviously deep state people who told him not to fight it, not to do this. They just wanted him to concede, and obviously they're working for the other side. And he should have had people around him who could have warned him about this, because when you get into a position like that, and you have thousands of people to appoint, you're not going to know who all the candidates are that people bring forward to you, and you rely on people who are going to be knowledgeable, supposedly, and who will have your interests and the nation's interests at heart to select the right ones.
William F. Jasper, our guest here today on Crosstalk. If you missed the website, we'll give it right after the break here. We're talking about the swamp refilling with deep state globalists. And folks, confirmation after confirmation that's going on is just another one from the deep state that's being put into their place of power and authority here in the U.S. Back in a minute. You're listening to Crosstalk.
Year after year, generation after generation, we as Americans enjoy the right and opportunity to let our voices be heard through the election of our governing officials. With over 200 years of peaceful transition from one elected body to another, the stability of America's republic stands alone among nations. Our founders pledged their life, their fortune, and their sacred honor in the establishment of this nation. Our country's founding documents have guided this nation and are the substance by which today's laws are judged. Do you own a copy of the Constitution? Documents of Freedom is a pocket-sized booklet containing the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and all other amendments passed. The booklet also features the Declaration of Independence and Washington's Farewell. Documents of Freedom is available for a donation of $5 or more to VCY America and can be made by calling 1-800-729-9829. That's 1-800-729-9829.
Listening to Crosstalk on VCY America. William F. Jasper is our guest today, senior editor at the New American Magazine. Again, the website, thenewamerican.com, thenewamerican.com. Many of you have heard Alex Newman multiple times with us on air. He writes for them as well. And the current article here about the swamp refilling with deep state globalists are guest here today has written that title here as well, and you'll find that as well as, matter of fact, he's got the listing of the deep state members in the Biden administration that have been published here. But also go to the website, do a search on Directing the Disorder, and you'll find a lot of other very interesting information here on this topic. Bill, while campaigning, Joe Biden said that his White House would look like the country. And concerning his top picks, he said, we're going to have a cabinet of barrier breakers, a cabinet of first. Is he more concerned about filling all these boxes of first than he is having people qualified for the positions that they're being placed?
Well, yes, and that was one of the points that I made here, is that it was obviously a ploy to satisfy all the social justice types who are demanding that you have all of the identity politics filled. You have to have so many women, check. So many ethnic minorities, check. All the LGBTQ, LMNOP people, and we even had to get a man-lady transgender to be put in charge of his health program. So that's the part that is obvious to most people, is that we're really going through an identity politics here, being politically correct, going to look real great. And, of course, all the media will love that and talk about how diverse this is. But the real diversity, as I point out, amongst most of these people are they left, far left, or off the planet left? They're all way to the far left of the political spectrum. But aside from that, the point that I wanted to make is their globalist non-diversity. They are all uniformly globalists. And so Anthony Blinken, who's Secretary of State, or General Lloyd Austin, Secretary of Defense, or Janet Yellen, who's Chairman of the Federal Reserve, Alejandro Mayorkas, Secretary of Homeland Security, and on down the list. What's very striking, but is never mentioned in the media, is that they are all members of the Council on Foreign Relations. And as we discussed previously, the Council on Foreign Relations has a very definite agenda, a history, a perspective, a globalist drive that they have been pushing for now a century. And that should be news. But, of course, we're not hearing about it anywhere from any of these so-called media outlets, because they are truly fake news, as President Trump said, and they're all tied at the hip with the Council on Foreign Relations.
Folks, so what we're seeing with the new Biden administration, with his cabinet, his administrative picks, he is just picking up where Barack Obama left off. Bill, President Biden has put together also a commission now to study recommendations pertaining to court packing and judicial reform. Is he looking for a trifecta here? You probably don't have to wait for this commission report to come out 180 days from now. What's your anticipation that's going to come from this commission? Is court packing, in our future here?
Well, it very well could be. We know that during the Amy Coney Barrett hearings, that came up. The Pelosi's and the Schumers and others brought it up after having previously said that, oh, no, we wouldn't go there. They all started talking about it then. And I believe that just about anything goes now with this administration. They already have the executive branch and the legislative branches, and now they're going to be going for the courts. And President Trump appointed over 250 federal judges, including those at the Supreme Court, the three that he made there. But there are still hundreds of Clinton, Bush, Obama judges in there, and we don't really know that all of the appointments that President Trump made are ones that we would be really happy with as constitutionalists. So, that's a major area of concern, because once they have all three branches. I mean, it's a slam dunk. Then they can basically push anything through.
One further question here before, and folks, if you'd like to start getting online here for our guest today, Bill Jasper, our number 800-733-9829. That's 800-733-9829. Your questions or brief comments. We've got a large audience here, Bill, and a lot of people who have faith in Jesus Christ. They're trusting God. They're praying for our nation. But they also wonder, as we see all that's afoot right now, how else can we be engaged in these troubling matters? How else can we be engaged in exposing what's going on? What's your response?
Well, many ways. Obviously, I'm biased, but I've been doing this for many years. The New American magazine, online and in print, we've been around for now going on 60 years. Our print magazine, which we changed to in 1983, it hasn't been around quite as long. We joined some other ones. So we have the information there. We've been putting out this information for all these decades and have a proven record. I think that it's incumbent on all Christians to pray, to fast, to do sacrifice for our country, because we're in a very desperate situation now. But then God gave us an intellect as well, and so we have to use that. Find reliable sources of information, and when I say that, the left is always saying, "Oh, the internet's all full of conspiracy wackos." Well, there are some of those out there. There are some unreliable sources out there that know what we want to hear and throw out a lot of things that have to be tested, and so that's what we do. And so Americans have to not give up, not give in, not give in to despair. They have to say, look, this is our country. This is the time that God has put us here. Yeah. This is the battle that he has put us into, and we're going to rise to the occasion. And we don't know all that we can do and should do, but we do know that we live in a republic, or what's left of it. Yes. And part of it, as the Founding Fathers pointed out in the Federalist Papers, is that we live in a compound republic. It is the federal government is not the only government. In fact, it wasn't supposed to be the major government. The major governments are supposed to be the states. And so we need to reinforce the constitutional importance of the sovereignty of the states. Yeah. And take back our states and have our states fight for our rights against the behemoth in Washington, D.C.
Friends, and someday we're going to do a full program just on these forms of government, but you'd never know that we're in a republic. You never know we're in a constitutional republic because all you hear is the word democracy coming through, whether it be the president, whether it be through the media, etc. But that's another program. Let's get to Faith in Central Pennsylvania. Faith, you're on the air.
Yes, please talk about Rick Warren and any other so-called religious leaders. Thank you.
Okay. Are there religious leaders that are promoting this one world government that you're observing and the push for it?
Yes. Very, very, very obviously. The most obvious ones are those that are on the far left, who are the churches that have been supporting the LGBTQ stuff, supporting the Black Lives Matter, etc. Many of these have been on the left for many years. Probably the most visible person promoting all of this, the global reset and everything now, is Pope Francis. And as a Catholic, I am appalled at what he has been promoting for the last several years. But of course, he's not alone. There are many various evangelical and Episcopalian and Presbyterian leaders and virtually all of the churches who have gotten sucked up into this, many of them through bribery. There's no other way to put it. They get tons of money, and George Soros isn't the only one. The Rockefeller Foundation, the Ford Foundation, the MacArthur Foundation, all of these, the big foundations that were investigated back in the 1950s and found that they were supporting many different subversive organizations, including churches, clear back then in the 1950s. So the churches have been infiltrated and infected by these same individuals. that are funding all of the left-wing organizations that are causing the rioting in our streets and whatnot. So, yes, the churches are very much involved in this.
Let's go to Tim calling from Ohio. Hi, Tim, you're on the air.
Yes. My comment, I just wanted to say that doesn't the Bible prophecy, the Antichrist is a global leader, ruler, and I don't even see the United States mentioned in prophecy. And I'd like to say also that I was and still am a big Trump supporter, but I'm just wondering, is it going to change? The powers that be are ordained of God, the Bible says.
Yeah,
it's really scary,
there's not. There's a new president that's inaugurated. That's President Biden is the president right now of the United States, and certainly all of his picks. And you heard our guest here today talk about the plethora of deep statists that are part of the cabinet and confirmation process. And you've got these that are sailing through the confirmation process right now, and we're talking some pretty high levels that are going on here. And certainly that does not diminish the role that believers have at such a time as this. Number one is to proclaim the gospel, and that we are both light as well as salt, and to have that impact upon our society around us and expose the works of darkness that are afoot. Thank you, Tim, for the call. Jerry is calling from Racine, Wisconsin. You're on the air. Hello, Jerry.
Yes, hello. Thank you very much to be on the air. I was just calling because, you got the president in for 4 years, maybe 8 years, and everyone else is in the deep state for lifetime appointments. But I want to let your listeners realize that there's someone else that's a lifetime appointment, and that's the people of this nation. We are supposed to have power, more power than the deep state, and we're there for longer. I've been there for longer. And I got an idea when Wyoming censured the representatives that were going after Trump. Every state whose representatives are going after Trump in this matter need to be censored. I don't have the capabilities to run marathons or a radio station, but this needs to happen. And once this happens, we need an audit of that election. Presidential elections are too important. There's too much evidence out there. People will join this.
Okay.
Yesterday's program inspired me. People will say, hey, yes, we need to censure these representatives that are going after Trump and his family and free speech, and then go probably get Democrats to censure the Democratic representatives that said no audit.
Jerry, we're up against a break right now, but we're going to take a break. I'm going to have our guests come back and respond to that first part of your question here. Is it not we the people? Or is not the people? What is the role of the people here as far as the government is concerned? So stay with us. We'll be back in a minute. This is Crosstalk on the VCY America Network.
For the Worldview Report, I'm Brandon House. Our website's worldviewreport.com. Monday, January 25th, 2021, kicked off the Great Global Reset Conference of the World Economic Forum. And true to form, they're calling for global governance, digital economy, social credit scores, banks and investment firms to align their portfolios against the free market system and for climate change and radical environmentalism. Well, we also heard at this conference from the UN Secretary General. He used to be the president of the Socialist International Party, so you know what you're going to get there. And the president of the World Economic Forum, well, he used to be in charge of the Sustainable Development Goals for the United Nations, which is, among many things, just international socialism. So, my friends, they needed to move out a president that was opposed to globalism as they bring down America to bring down the other Western worlds for the Great Reset.
William F. Jasper, our guest here today on Crosstalk. Again, the website, thenewamerican.com, thenewamerican.com. And especially do a search on that article, Directing the Disorder. So, Bill, what about we the people that the caller was asking about? Don't the people have authority?
Yes, that was a very good point by Jerry. Yes, we do, if we use it. And however, most Americans and most Christian Americans have not been using it. We've been too busy playing around and diverting our attention with other things and allowing the enemy to take over the country. And so, yes, he mentioned, should we not censor these folks that voted for impeachment? Yes, particularly the Republicans that voted for it, but also the Republicans that failed to step up and oppose this. So that's what's going on right now in Wyoming. Representative Matt Gaetz from Florida is down there. He was a big Trump supporter, and he's helping rally the troops there in Wyoming, where the Republican Party has all of the state and county Republican central committees and chairs have all condemned Liz Cheney's role in organizing support among the Republicans for impeaching President Trump. And hopefully she will be completely thrown out of office, and that's what should be happening all across the country. If you're a Republican, you should be getting a hold of your Republican leaders and tell them, look, we're not going to go back to sell out to China again like we had during the Bush administrations. And if you're a Democrat, you can't be satisfied with the way the Democrat Party is going. You should be on top of your local officials at the state and local level.
We've got Linda calling next from South Dakota. Linda, you're on the air.
Yes, I was going to ask William Jasper, where does Mike Pence stand in all of this? Was he a plant in the administration, or did somebody get to him? Is he a member of the CFR? And what are your feelings towards him or about him?
Thank you, Linda.
Well, thank you for the question. I was, like most other people that were supporters of the president, very highly disappointed with him, but I was not totally surprised. I was a little bit surprised when Trump chose him as a partner, because he would not have been my pick as a real solid stalwart. I think he's a decent man. I don't think we don't have real solid evidence that he was on the other side or that he was a plant. I think he was a weak man. And when you get into a tough situation like that, where you're getting squeezed from all sides, you don't want somebody who vacillates and is weak. And I think he let too many people get to him on that. And when you get into the boiler there in Washington, D.C., you better know where you're going to stand and stand firm, and he didn't. And so I think I put it down primarily to human weakness.
Thank you, Linda, for your call. We've got Randy next in Tacoma, Wisconsin. Randy, you're on the air.
Yeah. Hello, Jim. I've been reading a book, Covering the Shadows of the Deep State. It's through the John Birch Society. I think the CEO of the John Birch, Arthur Thompson. And in the book, in Chapter 2, he's got that, Karl Marx was a writer for the New York Tribune for about 11 years. And the publisher was Horace Greeley. Mm-hmm. And Horace Greeley had 50 communists.
Yeah, Randy, Randy, you got to talk right into your phone. We're losing you here.
Okay. Yeah, Horace Greeley had 50 communes across the country. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And a man by the name of Alan Beauvais, who was
I tell you what, I'm not able to have you do a full book review here, but Randy, I know our guest is well familiar with that book by Art Thompson. Are you not, Bill?
Yes, I did a review of it for the magazine. It is a very important book loaded with all kinds of historical facts that most Americans have never even heard of. Art Thompson did decades of research in putting that together. And so what your guest was mentioning is very important, because this is clear back in the 1830s and 40s when Karl Marx was a stringer or reporter for Horace Greeley's newspaper. And Horace Greeley is one of the most famous American newspaper publishers. And it shows that the battles that we're fighting here, the Marxists, the communists, the socialists, they were active here in the United States clear back then. And we have many people who have given us historical records from back during that time period. I'll just mention one, Orestes Brownson. Orestes Brownson was one of the most famous New England publishers, writers, essayists, newspaper men. And he wrote back then in the 1840s. He said, I was a member of the communist movement. Back then, it was before it was called that, even before Karl Marx wrote his Communist Manifesto in 1848. And he said we had permeated all of the school boards at that time and the state legislature in New York. So yeah, we're fighting a very long entrenched enemy.
Thank you, Randy. Duke in Tennessee, you're on the air.
Thank you very much for taking my call. Out of a Christian, our allegiance should be for God, country, and family. And, guys like Bob Corker, they talk about their faith. Can they really have a strong faith and not be faithful to this republic that God founded?
Thank you for that. Can one be a person of faith in God and also be faithful to the republic? Your response to that, Bill?
Yes, in the affirmative, one has to be if one is faithful to God. When one, particularly when one takes an office, and you take an oath of office to uphold and defend the Constitution, your honor as a Christian and your soul as a Christian is on the line there. And so it is incumbent on every Christian to be a good patriot, and that doesn't mean going along with whatever the government in power says. It means being a solid American, and here in the United States, that means following the Constitution. So even though we have not, as those of us who are not in elective office, may not have taken that same oath, or if we're not in uniform, it still binds all of us. And if you're an honorable
I tell you what, we're
Christian,
we got to leave it there, Bill. We're out of time. Thank you so much for being with us. It is thenewamerican.com, thenewamerican.com. Thank you, Bill, for carving out the time for us today.
My pleasure. Thank you.
And folks, thanks for joining us here today on Crosstalk.
You've been listening to Crosstalk via satellite and the internet from VCY America. Views expressed may or may not be those of this station. For a CD of today's program, send a donation of $6 or more to VCY Take Ministry, 3434 West Kilbourne Avenue, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, 53208, or download by RSS or podcast from crosstalkamerica.com. And join us again for Crosstalk.
Thanks again.
With SRN News, I'm John Scott. The South Carolina Senate has passed a bill that would outlaw almost all abortions in the state. The 30-13 vote overcomes years of hurdles thanks to Republicans winning new seats at last year's elections. The Senate vote is likely the final hurdle for the bill. It has passed the House easily in previous years. Governor Henry McMaster has said he will sign it as soon as he can. On the eve of the annual March for Life, Florida Senator Marco Rubio says abortion should be illegal, although that imposes some restrictions on what a woman can do with her body.
The right to live versus the right to choose. And on that, I err on the side of life, or I choose on the side of life, because it's the most fundamental of rights. Without life, none of the other rights we claim are possible.
Rubio was interviewed by the Salem Radio Network. Also at srnnews.com, an alternative to an impeachment trial is being floated by a leading Senate Democrat.
Senator Tim Kaine of Virginia is proposing censure as a possible alternative to the impeachment of President Donald Trump, as the required 17 votes needed from Senate Republicans for conviction appears out of reach. Kaine said Wednesday he's discussing